How Ilvermorny School of Magic came to be. Ilvermorny was started by Isolde Sayre. She was a descendant of Salazar Slytherin and was the child of Rhiannon Gaunt and William Sayre, both pureblood families. Isolde and her family lived in a cottage called Ilvermorny. Isolde was a descendant of the famous witch Morgan, who was an animagus and would transform into a crow. Because of Isolde's connection to unnatural beings, her father called her Morgan after the famous animagus. When Isolde was 5, her home was attacked and her parents were killed. Isolde was saved by Gormalaith Gaunt, her aunt, as her house was on fire. Gormalaith Gaunt raised Isolde, and years later, Isolde found out the truth that Gormalaith murdered her parents. Gormalaith kidnapped Isolde because she didn't want her to have a future with a non-magical spouse. Gormalaith believed that Isolde should only associate herself with purebloods. Gormalaith tortured Isolde by cursing muggles in front of her and refused to let her have a wand to practice magic. Isolde received her Hogwarts letter at the age of 11, but Gormalaith refused to let her go because the school was filled with half-bloods, and she chose to teach Isolde herself. After 12 years of age, Isolde stole her aunt's wand and fled the country. She eventually disguised herself as a boy and took the Mayflower to the New World. In the New World, Isolde encountered magical creatures and a hide-behind in a pugwudgie. The hide-behind can contort itself to hide behind almost any object, and the pugwudgie possesses powerful magic and hunts with poisonous arrows. The hide-behind captured a pugwudgie, but Isolde saved the pugwudgie by casting a curse that caused the hide-behind to flee. Because of this, the pugwudgie that was captured dedicated himself to Isolde until he could repay the debt. Over time, the two became friends, and Isolde named him William after her father. After many adventures, the two encountered a horned serpent. Isolde was able to speak with the serpent through her inherited ability of Apostle Tongue. Isolde discovered that one day 2 people were dead and 2 young boys were injured. The hide-behind that Isolde saved William from was responsible. Isolde and William defeated the hide-behind. Isolde told William if he helped save the injured boys, it would be considered repayment for his debt from her saving his life. William helped Isolde save the boys and afterwards left. The boys were named Chadwick and Webster. Isolde discovered a no-mage, also known as a non-magical being, in America, which is also known as a muggle throughout the rest of the wizarding world, a man named James. He was from the colony of Plymouth and a stonemason from England. James constructed a house on Mount Greylock, and Isolde liked the design and constructed a home in its image and named it Ilvermorny. It was named Ilvermorny after the cottage she was born in, the one her aunt destroyed. Isolde eventually married James, and the two eventually considered Chadwick and Webster their adopted sons. With the fear of Gormalaith, Isolde told the boys instead of sending them to Hogwarts, she would find them wands and they would start a school of magic. Since Chadwick and Webster's vision of a magical school was based on their thoughts of Hogwarts, they wanted Isolde to make the school similar. The school was given 4 houses based on their favorite magical beasts. Chadwick's was Thunderbird. Webster chose the Wampus Cat. Isolde chose the Horned Serpent from her past visits. James chose a Pugwudgie because the stories he was told from Isolde about her travels with William. The forces from this were established. Before Chadwick's 11th birthday, Isolde had a dream that she went to find the Horned Serpent and took a piece of its horn. Isolde awoke and did exactly like her dream and returned to the Horned Serpent. James crafted a wand for Chadwick with the horn of the serpent that she took shavings from. Isolde eventually gave birth 2 daughters, Rhiannon and Martha. Ilvermorny wound up developing further and further, and it grew with students. News spread, and Gormalaith heard this news overseas. Gormalaith replaced her wand with one from Ollivander's and traveled to America under the name of William Sayre, Isolde's father, who she murdered. Gormalaith landed and intended to destroy Ilvermorny, murder Isolde and James, and kidnap her nieces. When Gormalaith arrived, she casted a curse on Ilvermorny, causing Isolde and James to fall into an enchanted sleep. Gormalaith spoke Parseltongue to the wand Isolde stole and forced it to sleep so it was inactive. Isolde's wand was the wand of Salazar Slytherin, and it was handed down. The wand had the core of a basilisk. Chadwick's wand was the horn of a serpent, and it vibrated when the Parseltongue was spoke, but it did not sleep. Chadwick and Webster were not accounted for by Gormalaith. Chadwick ran after Gormalaith and dueled her one-on-one. Webster joined the duel midway in between, and with his new wand that was made by James, had the core of the serpent as well. 2-on-1, the boys dueled Gormalaith, but were eventually driven back. Gormalaith did not take into account the power of love. This power was the only power that could break her enchanted spell. Martha and Rhiannoch screamed, and the spell broke. Isolde awoke. Isolde attempted to aid Chadwick and Webster during the duel, but was shocked to find that her wand was asleep. Gormalaith attempted to approach Martha and Rhiannoch as James stood in the way, prepared to die. Before murdering James, Martha, and Rhiannoch, William the Pugwudgie appeared through the window and shot Gormalaith with a poison arrow. Because of the dark curses Gormalaith experimented with in the past, when the poison arrow collided with her body, the dark curses had a reaction and burst her into 1,000 pieces. All that was left was dust. William became the school's private secretary at Ilvermorny for a time. James and Isolde buried Salazar's wand, and from it grew a snakewood tree. By the 19th century, Ilvermorny gained a famous reputation. Isolde and James were headmaster and headmistress for a long time. Chadwick became an accomplished wizard and wrote Chadwick's Charms, which is a required current standard textbook at Ilvermorny. Webster became part of the Macusa law enforcement. Martha discovered to be a squib and lived her life as a nomad, also known as a muggle. Rhiannoch Stewart, it was thought that a rumor was she could speak Parseltongue, but she eventually taught the Defense Against the Dark Arts position at Ilvermorny. Isolde and James eventually died after surpassing 100 years old. Statues of Isolde and James stand in front of Ilvermorny Castle. Similar to the Sorting Hat, students are chosen by their reaction of sculptures in the atrium of Ilvermorny. If the horned serpent wants a student, it lights up. If the wampus wants a student, it roars. If the thunderbird chooses a student, it beats its wings. If a pugwudgie wants a student, it raises its arrow into the air. If more than one chooses a student, it's up to the student. An example of this is Seraphina Pickery. She was chosen by all 4 houses, and she chose the horned serpent. There is an aged pugwudgie at Ilvermorny still to this day by the name of William. He jokes with students that the original William would be over 300 years old. However, the pugwudgie has been seen laying flowers on Isolde's tomb, and many still think it's the original William, based on the feature that no one knows how long pugwudgies can live. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Ilvermorny School? If you would like to know more about Harry Potter and the Wizarding World lore, subscribe to Chase and Josh Factor Fantasy Podcast. The link is in the bio, or you can subscribe to Ridiculous Patronus on YouTube. Thank you, everyone. Have a magical week.